Imagine, if you will, a sound. It's not a pleasant sound. It's sharp, metallic, a single high-pitched shing, like a razor blade slicing through the empty air. It just cuts right through the silence.
Hmm.
And then immediately following that cut, I want you to imagine a pulse, a rhythmic, deep, cold synthesizer beat. Thump, thump, thump. Sounds like a heartbeat, but mechanical. Like the universe is just waiting for something.
You are really leaning into the noir atmosphere today. I feel like I should be wearing a trench coat and standing under a flickering street lamp.
That is exactly the vibe I want, because today we are not just, we're not just doing a deep dive. We are detectives.
Okay.
We are walking onto the scene of the ultimate cold case. The body on the floor isn't a person. It's the cosmos itself. And the question isn't just who did it. The question is, what is this thing even made of? And the weapon we've been handed to solve this crime. It's that razor I just mentioned.
Occam's razor.
The most famous blade in philosophical history. But here's the twist, and this is why I wanted to start with that specific imagery. We usually think of this razor as a tool for science, a tool for skeptics. We think of it as the weapon that killed superstition.
That's definitely the standard narrative, yes. The idea is that as you slice away the myths and, the magic using logic, you are left with just the cold, hard facts of nature.
Exactly. We are going to perform some cosmic downsizing. We are going to take the bloated, messy complexity of existence, and we're just going to start cutting. We're going to strip away the variables. We're going to cut out the fat. We're going to slice through the noise until we find the leanest, most efficient version of the truth.
But that brings us to the terrifying quail at the center of today's deep dive, doesn't it? When you start slicing, where do you stop?
Right.
When you pare reality down to its absolute bare metal minimum, what is actually left on the table?
Do we find a hollow void? Just a mechanical clockwork that wound itself up by complete accident? Or does that final sharpest cut reveal something else? Something singular.
A sovereign intelligence.
That is the thriller hook for today. We are looking at the simplest answer. Is it a universe that generated itself by chance, what our source for today calls naturalistic parsimony? Or is it a universe sustained by a single, non-composite reality?
What the source calls divine simplicity, or in the Islamic tradition, Tawhid.
And for this, we are diving into a really fascinating, dense, and frankly mind-bending piece of work titled Tawhid and the Razor, Divine Simplicity versus Naturalistic Parsimony by J.R. Ahmed. And the mission for us is to figure out if the simplest answer is actually the one we've been told it is all this time.
It's the battle of the many versus the one. And I think you, the listener, are going to be surprised by which side the razor actually favors when you use it correctly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we start slashing at the fabric of space-time, we need to understand the tool. I feel like Occam's razor is one of those phrases people, they throw it around at dinner parties to sound smart, but if you actually ask them where it came from, they'd just stare at you blankly.
It's definitely a buzzword. But the history is really important here because it sets the stage for the mindset. The namesake is William of Occam.
A scientist. I always assumed he was some early scientist.
No, actually. He was a 14th century Franciscan friar, a theologian and a logician. And the Franciscan part is, well, it's pretty relevant because that order was all about simplicity, poverty, stripping away worldly possessions. So this idea of stripping away was baked into his lifestyle long before it ever became a philosophical principle.
So he was a minimalist before it was cool.
Exactly, a philosophical minimalist. Now, he didn't invent the concept. You can find traces of it in Aristotle. Aquinas talked about it. But Occam gave us the maxim that stuck. He did the branding, if you will.
Ah, the marketing.
The marketing. In Latin, the phrase is entia non sint multiplicanda praeter necessitatem.
My high school Latin is a little rusty. Break that down for us.
It basically translates to entities need not multiply in reason's guiding light, or the functional version we use today, entities must not be multiplied beyond necessity.
Beyond necessity. That's the key phrase right there. It's like an anti-hoarding rule for your brain.
It is. It's a demand for intellectual efficiency. Don't make things more complicated than they need to be.
I always picture a really grumpy old-school book editor, you know the type. You hand in this 500-page manuscript full of flowery descriptions, and he just takes out a red pen and starts slashing.
Yes.
You don't need 3 adjectives to describe the sky.
Yeah.
Just say it's blue, cut this character, they don't do anything, cut this subplot, it goes absolutely nowhere.
That's a fantastic analogy, because why does the editor do that? Is he just being mean? No. He's trying to get to the truth of the story. If you clutter the narrative with unnecessary elements, you lose the plot. Occam was saying the universe works the same way. The simplest story is usually the truest one.
So if I can explain why the toast fell off the table using gravity and my clumsy elbow,
Yeah.
I don't need to invent a toast-pushing gremlin to explain it.
Precisely. The gremlin is the multiplied entity. It adds a layer of complexity. Now I have to explain what a gremlin is, where it lives, why it hates your toast. Whereas gravity and elbow are variables we already have on the table. They're known quantities.
So the gremlin is just noise. It's a fifth wheel.
It's an unnecessary variable, and the razor says, cut it, get rid of it.
This connects directly back to that noir vibe I'm pushing. Because who is the ultimate practitioner of this method in fiction? Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, absolutely. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle basically weaponized Occam's razor for detective fiction.
When you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth.
That is the logic of elimination. It's a subtractive process. You don't find the truth by adding more and more theories. You find it by stripping away the ones that don't fit the data. You chip away at the block of marble to reveal the statue hidden inside.
And it's not just fiction. We see it with the giants of science. Isaac Newton, the father of classical physics, was obsessed with this principle of simplicity.
He was. In his Principia Mathematica, his masterpiece, Newton explicitly states that nature is inherently simple. He says, and I'm paraphrasing here, we are to admit no more causes of natural things than such as are both true and sufficient to explain their appearances.
True and sufficient. That's a very high bar. It's not just true. It has to be sufficient.
It is. Newton saw the universe as this elegant machine, not some chaotic Rube Goldberg-esque mess. He believed that if you found a simple law like gravity that could explain both the orbit of the moon and the fall of an apple, well, you had found the truth.
You didn't need one law for heavenly bodies and a different special law for apples.
Exactly. One law to rule them all. It's about unification, efficiency, elegance.
So we have the tool. It cuts away the excess. It demands simplicity and efficiency. Now, here is where the plot thickens in our investigation. In the modern world, let's say in the last century or so, this razor has been claimed by a very specific group. It's been entered into evidence by the prosecution.
And the prosecution in this case being the naturalists, the atheists.
Right. And I want to give their argument its full weight here because it is incredibly compelling on the surface. We need to steelman this, not build a straw man.
Go for it. Let's hear the case for the prosecution.
The argument goes like this. Look at the universe. We have physics, we have chemistry, we have geology, we have natural selection. We can explain the rain, the sun, the movement of the planets, and the staggering diversity of life using these natural observable mechanics.
The machine runs itself, no operator needed.
Exactly. So, if I can explain the painting using just the laws of pigment and canvas and light, why do I need to invent a painter?
The God hypothesis becomes the toast gremlin.
That's the accusation. That's precisely it. The source material captures this sentiment perfectly. It describes the atheist's cry as, this God, a fifth wheel, an unnecessary word.
It's a powerful metaphor, a fifth wheel on a car.
Right. It's a perfect image. If a car runs perfectly on four wheels, adding a fifth one to the roof doesn't make it go faster. It doesn't help it turn. It just adds weight. It adds drag. It's pure redundancy.
And this brings us to a really crucial concept for understanding the naturalist position. It's the explanatory power versus simplicity trade-off.
Break that down for us. What does that mean?
Well, in science, a good theory is one that explains a huge amount of data. That's high explanatory power while making very few assumptions. That's high simplicity.
High output, low input. Maximum bang for your buck.
Exactly. The naturalist argument is that adding God to the equation gives you zero additional predictive power. Think about it. If you are building a bridge, does believing in God help you calculate the stress load on the steel beams?
No. Physics does that. Engineering does that.
Does believing in God help you predict the path of a hurricane?
No. Thermodynamics and meteorology do that.
So the argument goes, God adds this massive layer of complexity, an invisible, omnipotent, eternal super being. But he doesn't actually do any work in the equations. You have dramatically increased the complexity of your theory without increasing its utility one bit.
So under the strict rules of parsimony, you have to cut him. The razor has to come out.
That is the argument. But there is a second layer to the prosecution's case, which is maybe even more powerful. It's the infinite complexity objection.
Oh, this one always ties my brain in knots.
It's the classic who designed the designer argument.
Right. The source mentions this explicitly. If your argument is, look, the universe is too complex to be an accident, so there must be a designer, You've just created a bigger problem for yourself.
Because logically, a designer must be more complex than the thing he designs.
A watchmaker is more complex than a watch. A computer programmer is, infinitely more complex than the code he writes.
Precisely. So, if you invoke God to explain the complexity of the universe, you haven't solved the problem of complexity at all. You've just moved it upstairs. You've replaced a complex mystery, which is the universe, with an infinitely complex mystery, which is God.
And in doing that, you've just shattered Occam's razor into a million pieces. You've multiplied entities and you've multiplied complexity.
This is why many naturalists view belief in God not just as unproven, but as intellectually lazy. They call it intellectual reluctance.
The god of the gaps.
Exactly. It gets framed as, I don't know how this works, so it must be magic, or I don't understand abiogenesis, therefore God. And as science advances, the argument goes, the gaps get smaller and smaller, and God gets squeezed out of the picture.
It paints this picture of the razor as this triumphant sword of science, chasing the shadows of superstition back into the corners until the lights are fully on and the room is empty of anything supernatural.
That is the prosecution's opening statement. It's clean, it's rational, it feels like the noir detective solving the case with pure, cold logic. There it is. The but. I was waiting for it.
You know me. I love a good plot twist.
Well, the source material J.R. Ahmed's work argues that there is a glitch in this matrix, a fundamental flaw in how the razor is being applied by the naturalists.
Let's move to section 2 of our investigation then. The glitch in the matrix. Because the expert, that's you, is about to challenge my cold, clinical definition.
We have to go back to the original maxim. Entities must not be multiplied beyond necessity.
Necessity.
That is the operative word. That is the trap door in the argument. You can only cut away variables if, and this is a massive, massive, if what remains is actually capable of explaining the data.
A caveat of adequacy.
Exactly. Let's go back to the spilled milk on the floor. You can cut the gremlin from your explanation because the cat explanation is sufficient. It adequately explains all the facts.
Right.
But what if you didn't have a cat? What if you lived completely alone, the doors were locked from the inside, the windows were sealed shut, and the glass had been glued to the table?
Then the explanation, it just fell, isn't a simple explanation. It's a false explanation. It's an inadequate one.
Exactly. If the simple explanation fails to account for the core facts, it's not the truth. It's just a lie with fewer words.
So the real question we have to ask is this. Does naturalism actually explain the fundamental data of the universe? Or is it just a stripped-down fiction that leaves out all the most important chapters?
Is it a car with 3 wheels that looks simpler on paper but can't actually drive?
Okay, let's audit the books then. The source material lists the gaps in the naturalist worldview. And these aren't small potholes in the road. These are Grand Canyons.
The first one is the biggest, the absolute origin point, origins.
Why is there something rather than nothing? That question.
Naturalism has to assume the universe or the laws that generate it as a brute fact. It starts with the premise that matter, energy, and physical laws just are. They just exist, and there's no explanation for them.
But that's not an explanation.
It's not. Naturalism is great at explaining how matter moves and interacts once it exists. It has zero explanation for how existence itself emerges from absolute non-existence.
It can explain the whole play, but it can't explain how the theater got built in the first place.
Or why there's a theater at all instead of just an empty void. If you start your story at chapter 2, you haven't explained the book. You've just skipped the most important part.
Okay, gap number 2, life, abiogenesis.
And this is where we need to get very specific. We are not talking about evolution here, how a fish becomes a frog. That's a different discussion. We're talking about how a rock becomes a microbe.
The jump from non-living chemistry to living biology.
It is a staggering leap in complexity. We're talking about things like chirality, the handedness of molecules in life, which are all left-handed for some reason. We're talking about the insane complexity of protein folding. Most of all, we're talking about the emergence of information of code. DNA.
DNA is a language.
It's a programming language. We have absolutely no working model for how inert, non-living chemicals spontaneously organize themselves into a self-replicating, information-bearing system against the forces of entropy.
And people just gloss over this. They say, well, given enough time and enough planets, anything is possible.
But that's not a scientific explanation. That's a statement of faith. It's saying, it happened, therefore it must be possible without a designer. That is purely circular logic. It doesn't answer the question.
Okay, next canyon. The fine-tuning of the universe.
The precise calibration of the cosmos. This one is just mind-boggling. The gravitational constant, the weak and strong nuclear forces, the cosmological constant. The source points out that if these fundamental values were different by a fraction of a percent,
Like 1 part in a billion billion. I've heard numbers like that.
even less in some cases, it's like a razor's edge. If gravity was just slightly stronger, the universe would have collapsed back into a black hole immediately after the Big Bang. If it was slightly weaker, stars and galaxies would never have formed.
And no stars means no heavy elements. No carbon.
No carbon means no life. The universe looks rigged.
It looks incredibly rigged. It looks like a combination lock with 100 dials that was spun randomly and landed perfectly on the right combination on the very first try.
Naturalism really struggles to explain why the dice rolled a double 6 1,000 times in a row. It has to just chalk it up to incomprehensible luck.
And finally, the gap that hits closest to home for all of us. Consciousness and morality.
The so-called hard problem. If naturalism is true, if we are just matter in motion, then you and I are just wet robots. We are biological machines made of meat and electricity.
Which means our thoughts, our love, our sense of beauty, it's all just chemical fizz. An illusion.
And it means morality isn't real in any objective sense. It's just an evolutionary survival trick that got hardwired into our brains. Murder isn't evil, it's just counterproductive for the herd's survival.
But we don't live like that. I don't care how hardcore of a materialist you are. If someone hurts your child, you don't think that is a genetically disadvantageous behavior. You feel in your bones that is wrong.
We experience meaning, purpose, and objective moral duty as fundamental realities of our existence. So here is the problem for the prosecution's case. If your simple theory fails to adequately explain origins, life, fine-tuning, and consciousness, is it really a good theory?
Or is it a lobotomized theory? That's a brutal image. You've cut away so much of the brain tissue that the patient is dead, even if the body's still there.
And the source material goes even deeper. It suggests that this isn't just about missing data or unsolved problems. It's about a rigged game.
You're referring to the Richard Lewontin admission, aren't you?
Yes. For those who don't know, Richard Lewontin was a brilliant evolutionary biologist, a Harvard professor, and a staunch, outspoken atheist. And in a moment of startling honesty, he wrote something that just pulls the curtain back on the whole enterprise.
I have the quote right here. And for you listening, pay close attention, because this is the smoking gun in our detective story. He writes, "We take the side of science in spite of the patent absurdity of some of its constructs, because we have a prior commitment, a commitment to materialism."
Keep going. The next part is the real key.
It is not that the methods and institutions of science somehow compel us to accept a material explanation, but on the contrary, that we are forced by our a priori adherence to material causes to create an apparatus of investigation that produces material explanations, no matter how counterintuitive, no matter how mystifying to the uninitiated.
We are forced by an a priori commitment, a commitment made before looking at the evidence.
That is unbelievably candid.
It is essentially a confession that the investigation is rigged. He is saying flat out, we didn't look at the universe and conclude there is no God. We decided there is no God before we started, and then we built a version of science that would only ever be allowed to produce answers that fit that preordained conclusion.
So my reaction to that, the host reaction, is that this turns Occam's razor from a neutral tool for finding truth into a weapon of ideology.
It becomes metaphysics masquerading as methodology. They aren't finding the truth. They are enforcing a pre-decided worldview. It's like a detective who decides the butler did it before he even enters the house and then ignores the muddy footprints on the windowsill because we have a prior commitment to the butler theory.
So we've dulled the blade a little bit. We've shown that naturalism might not be as sufficient or adequate as it claims, but you can't just tear down one theory. You have to propose a better one that fills those gaps.
Correct. You need a better, more sufficient explanation for the data we see.
And this brings us to section 3 of our deep dive, the resonant frequency. The source material introduces a concept that I think we need to define very, very carefully. The word is Tawhid.
Tawhid. This is the absolute central foundational concept of Islamic theology. Now, if you ask most people on the street, they'll say, oh, that just means monotheism, one God.
Which is true, right? Does mean that.
It is true, but it's completely insufficient for this conversation. In the context of this philosophical deep dive, Tawhid means something much more profound, divine simplicity.
Okay, we need to pause right there, because we just spent 10 minutes talking about how simplicity is the excuse naturalists use to delete God from the equation. Now you're telling me that God is simplicity. That sounds like a contradiction.
It does. I know it sounds contradictory on the surface, but we have to distinguish between two meanings of the word simple. There's simple as in basic or easy to understand, and then there's simple as in non-composite, not made of parts.
Explain that distinction, composite versus simple.
Okay, look at a human being. Look at yourself. You are composite. You are made of parts. You have a body which has organs, which have cells. You have a mind. You have distinct emotions. You have knowledge that you acquired over time. You're a bundle of different things.
I'm a collection of parts, a Lego set.
You are a very complex Lego set. And because you are a Lego set, you are dependent. You rely on your parts to exist. If I take away your heart, you cease to exist. You also require an assembler of some kind, genetics, environment, to put all the parts together in the right order.
And because of that, a composite being cannot be the first cause, because the parts had to exist before the being could be assembled.
Exactly. You've got it. But the concept of Tawhid, of divine simplicity, asserts that God is absolutely simple. He is non-composite. He has no parts. He is not a physical body. He's not a mind separate from a will. He is not a collection of attributes like power and wisdom that are somehow glued together.
So he doesn't have power like I have a muscle.
No, his power is his wisdom, which is his mercy, which is his existence. It is a single, unified, singular reality. There are no seams, there are no joints, there are no components.
The source quotes Surah Al-Ikhlas from the Quran here, which is like the manifesto of this idea. Say, He is Allah, the One, Allah, the eternal refuge. He neither begets nor is born.
And that last phrase, he neither begets nor is born, is technically a profound statement of non-composition. He doesn't produce parts like children, and he doesn't come from parts like parents. He is a closed loop of absolute perfection and self-sufficiency.
This leads to what the source calls the ontological argument for parsimony. That sounds like a mouthful, but I think I'm starting to get it. The source argues that atheists, when they use the razor, are counting the wrong things.
Yes, this is the core of the counter-argument. Atheists focus on quantitative parsimony.
Quantitative, meaning quantity.
Right. They ask, how many beings are there? Naturalism equals 0 gods. Theism equals 1 god. 0 is less than 1. Therefore, naturalism is simpler. Case closed.
That's the simple math we did in the first section.
But the Tawhid asks us to look at qualitative parsimony, the nature of the being, not just the number. And the source uses a brilliant analogy here involving mathematics, the essential unit.
I love this part, the singular denominator.
Think of God not as a +1 added to the universe. Don't think of him as an extra item in the shopping cart, making it more crowded. Think of him as the prime number, the indivisible foundation of the entire number system.
Or the denominator in a fraction. That one really clicked for me.
Exactly. If you have a fraction, the numerator, the top number, can be anything. It can be complex, variable, messy. That represents the universe with all its parts. But for that fraction to have any value, for it to even exist mathematically, it must have a denominator. If the denominator is 0, the fraction is undefined. It's mathematical chaos. Nothingness.
So God is the one in the denominator that makes the entire fraction of existence solvable. He's the ground.
Yes. He is the necessary ground of being. Without this singular, simple unit, the universe is just a collection of floating variables with no anchor. It's just those brute facts that explain nothing at all.
And this leads to what the source calls the inversion of complexity. This is the real flip.
This is the critical pivot. Naturalism requires the many, the complex universe, the laws, the matter, to somehow organize itself into a one, an ordered, coherent cosmos. It tries to derive order from chaos. It's like trying to get a library to write itself by blowing up a print shop.
Which feels completely backwards. It violates everything we know about entropy.
It is backwards. Tawhid, on the other hand, posits that the one, the absolutely simple reality, gave rise to the many.
And metaphysically, and even mathematically, it is far more elegant to derive complexity from absolute simplicity than it is to derive simplicity and order from chaos.
A single simple seed can create a complex forest, but a forest cannot spontaneously appear without a prior cause. Deriving the many from the one is the very definition of philosophical and scientific elegance.
So the razor, it actually cuts towards God, not away from him.
If you use it correctly, yes. If you're looking for the truly most parsimonious explanation, the sharpest cut reveals the necessary ground, the singular denominator.
Okay, that's the theory. It's a powerful theory. But a detective needs evidence. We can't just talk about prime numbers and Lego sets. We need to look at the physical clues at the crime scene. We need to see if the universe itself testifies to this idea.
Section 4. Reading the signs.
The source material calls the universe an ayah. What does that mean?
An ayah. It's the Arabic word for a sign or a miracle. A verse in the Quran is called an ayah, but a mountain is also an ayah. The sun is an ayah. The idea is that the universe is a text. It's a message that is constantly broadcasting the nature of its author.
So we should be able to read the universe and see this signature of the one.
That's the claim. And the source points to specific data points, Quranic verses, that made specific claims about the cosmos centuries ago, which align with what we've only recently discovered with modern cosmology. Let's start with the big one, the Big Bang.
The beginning of it all.
The source references a verse from the Quran, chapter 21, verse 30. Have those who disbelieve not considered that the heavens and the earth were a joined entity and we separated them?
Joined entity. Let's break that down. The Arabic word is rat. What does that imply?
It implies something fused together, sewn together, a solid, seamless mass. This aligns perfectly with the scientific concept of the primal singularity. The universe didn't start as a scattered mess of gas clouds. It started as a single point of infinite density, a simple, non-composite beginning.
And then we separated them.
The expansion, the explosive tearing apart of that singularity to create space and time and matter as we know it.
And what about the expansion itself? Is it still happening?
Yes, and the source quotes another verse, Quran 51.47, and the heaven we constructed with strength, and indeed we are its expander.
We are its expander, not we expanded it.
Exactly. Note the active present tense, we are expander. It implies a continuous ongoing action. A single will is still driving the process. It's not a grenade that went off and is now just coasting apart. It's more like a balloon that is still being inflated by a steady, constant breath.
What about the order we see? I always find the orbital mechanics argument interesting because chaos seems so much more likely than order. It implies a conductor.
The Quran mentions this in chapter 21, verse 33. It describes the sun and the moon swimming in an orbit. The word used is yazbahun. It implies a smooth, controlled, effortless motion within a medium.
But the deeper philosophical argument here is about order versus chaos.
Right. If the universe were ruled by multiple competing forces, say multiple gods as in a pantheon, or just random chaotic vectors with no guide, you would expect collisions. You would expect erratic behavior. Things would be a mess. The fact that the solar system works like a Swiss watch implies a single watchmaker, a single set of laws.
There's a verse that says, if there were in them gods besides Allah, then verily both the heavens and the earth would have been ruined.
The too many cooks in the kitchen argument. Chaos is the natural state of competing forces. Order is the sign of a single will.
And the source brings this down from the cosmos to right here on earth, to biology. It quotes Quran 24.45. Allah has created every living creature from water.
This is a striking statement of biological unity written 1,400 years ago. Think about the staggering diversity of life on Earth. A cactus in the desert, a blue whale in the ocean, a human being, a single-celled bacteria.
They look nothing alike. Completely different.
Totally different hardware. And yet, when you get down to the fundamental chemical level,
They're all water balloons.
we are all water-based chemistry. We all share the same universal solvent. We all share the same basic DNA structure with the same 4 letters in the code.
So instead of a chaotic mix, silicon-based life over here, methane-based life over there, carbon-based life here, we see a unified design language across the entire planet.
One simple element, water as the basis. Infinite variation built upon it. That is the signature of a master artist. He uses one medium to paint a billion different pictures. It constantly reinforces that central theme of the one generating the many.
Okay, we are heading toward the climax of this investigation, the final calculation. We have 2 competing worldviews on the table. On one side, naturalism, which claims to be the champion of simplicity. On the other side, Tawhid, or divine simplicity, claiming to be the ultimate parsimony. And now, I want to expose what the source calls the shell game.
This is the intellectual thriller moment you were talking about at the start, because this is where we see the hidden cost of the naturalist position, the price you have to pay.
We talked earlier about the fine-tuning problem, the fact that the universe is impossibly perfect for life.
Right. The odds are statistically infinitesimal. It's like throwing a billion Scrabble tiles into the air and having them land perfectly, spelling out the entire works of Shakespeare.
So how does the naturalist explain this unbelievable luck without invoking God, without invoking a designer?
Well, they are forced into a very tight corner. To explain the impossible luck, they have to dramatically increase the sample size. They need more lottery tickets.
They invent the multiverse.
The multiverse. an infinite or near infinite number of other universes, each with different physical constants.
Because if you have an infinite number of universes, then one of them is bound to look like ours just by sheer dumb accident. We just happen to be the ones who won the cosmic lottery.
But wait a minute, let's go back to our razor. The prime directive. Entities must not be multiplied beyond necessity.
Ah, I see exactly where you're going with it.
To avoid one simple, non-composite entity, God the naturalist has just invented infinite complex entities universes.
That seems like a pretty significant violation of the razor.
It is the ultimate violation. It's the most extravagant, unparsimonious explanation imaginable. The source calls them trillion coincidence entities. You are literally multiplying invisible, unobservable, completely unverifiable universes purely to avoid the much simpler conclusion of design.
It's the shell game. You see the P under one shell design, and you don't like it. So you hide the complexity by bringing in a trillion other shells and call it the multiverse, and hope nobody notices that you just multiplied your entities by infinity.
It's like finding a bullseye with an arrow shot perfectly into the center.
An expert archer shot it. That's one entity.
An infinite number of blindfolded people have been shooting arrows in random directions for eternity, and this just happens to be the one room where, by chance, the arrow hit the center.
Hypothesis B is technically possible, I guess, but it's utterly ridiculous.
And it is certainly not parsimonious. It is the most complex explanation you could possibly come up with.
So when the atheist says God is too complex an explanation, they are ignoring the fact that their only viable alternative is infinitely more complex.
Right. And this brings us right back to the metaphysical efficiency of Tawhid. God, as the simple, non-composite reality, is the necessary ground. Without this unit, this singular denominator, the universe is just a pile of floating variables. It's a run-on sentence with no punctuation and no author.
So let me see if I can sum up the finding of our investigation. The razor, that cold, sharp, metallic blade we started with, it actually cuts towards God, not away from him.
That is the ultimate conclusion of the source material, the sharpest cut, the one that strips away all the unnecessary additions like the multiverse, reveals the eternal refuge. When you strip away the trillion coincidence entities, when you strip away the brute facts that explain nothing, you are left with the singular denominator, the one that explains the all.
It's a fascinating inversion of the common narrative. We usually think of science and religion as these opposing forces, with science being the simple, logical one and religion being the complex, mystical one. But this deep dive suggests that at the most fundamental level of reality, God is actually the simplest explanation.
The ultimate parsimony.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've traveled from William of Occam's monastery all the way to the bleeding edge of the multiverse. What's the takeaway?
I think it means we need to rethink how we view complexity. When you look at the world, whether it's the intricate structure of a leaf or the vastness of space, don't just see a collection of parts. Don't just see a heap of stuff.
Ask the detective's question.
Ask the detective's question, what sustains this? What holds it all together? Is it a chaotic pile of accidents that just happened to fall this way? Or is it a unified sign pointing to something beyond itself?
The source leaves us with this powerful idea that the universe isn't just a collection of independent objects floating in a void. It's a singular, unfolding ayah, a single coherent sign pointing back to its singular source.
And if you accept that, the universe stops being this cold, empty, meaningless place. It becomes a resonant chamber. Every atom, every star, every living cell is humming with that same fundamental frequency, the frequency of the one.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We talked about equations in sentences today. Is the universe a run-on sentence scribbled by chance, sprawling and messy, and ultimately incoherent? Or is it a single, elegant equation that resolves to one?
The next time you look at the complexity of your own hand, the fingerprints, the nerves, the bones working in perfect concert, ask yourself, is this just a collection of spare parts thrown together by a storm? Or is it a sign of the indivisible?
Something to think about next time you're staring up at the stars or even just looking in the mirror.
Indeed.
That's it for this deep dive into Tawhid and the razor. We've tried to slice through the noise, and hopefully we've found a little bit of signal. Thanks for listening.
Until next time.
Stay curious.